This is Antic, the Atari 8-Bit Podcast. I'm Kay Savitz. Daniel Serpell is the creator of FastBasic, a modern interpretation of the basic programming language for the Atari 8-bit computers. He released the first version to the public in 2017. Today, the GPL licensed language is up to version 4.6 and is a favorite of the 10-line basic game contest entrants and anyone who wants a speedy, modern take on Atari programming. I'm going to crib from AtariWiki's description of FastBasic. It is a complete re-implementation of the basic system using a built-in bytecode compiler rather than a tokenizing interpreter. Typical BASICs use an interpreter that examines every line of code as the program runs. FastBasic works on an entirely different principle. When a line is parsed in FastBasic, it essentially compiles the entire line into tokens and then leaves them in memory. This way, the line does not have to be repeatedly parsed, even from the simplified token format, which makes it far faster to run. FastBasic has other enhancements, including new commands for player missiles and communicating with FujiNet, an option to use faster integer math instead of floating point, and structured programming instead of line numbers. This interview took place on December 21st, 2024. What city are you in?
Viña del Mar.
I don't know that city. Okay.
You can search it in Google. Viña del Mar is near Santiago in the coast of Chile.
Excellent. I would like to start at the very beginning. If you could tell me how you got interested in computers, when you got your first Atari, how old were you? What year was it? Just kind of start there and we'll go from there.
I think I was interested in computers from the early days, from my early memories from when I was a child, were thinking I really want a computer. And the first time I saw a computer nearby in 1982, I think one of my neighbors that was bigger than me, older than me, got himself an CA81. I don't know if you know it. It's a Sinclair computer that was very basic, 2 kilobytes of RAM, and the CA81 it uses a C80 processor, and it has 2 kilobytes of RAM. And I was hooked. It's like a marvel because you connected the computer. It was a tiny little thing to the TV, and in the TV you could write a program, you could calculate things. It was really mind-blowing for me. I was about 8 years old at that time, so I was hooked. And from that time onward, I always wanted to have a computer. But computers were really expensive. Even home computers were really expensive and rare here in Chile. But in the Christmas of '85, so 39 years from now, exactly, I got a computer for Christmas. It was it was for all my brothers and I. It was an Atari 800 XL. So that was my first computer, and that's how my interest in the Atari specifically started. I vividly remembering in the day after Christmas, mounting the computer, hooking up to the TV, and loading Bruce Lee, the first game I played in the Atari.
And you played the games with your brothers? Your brother, I assume? And...
Yeah, my big brother, actually, I don't remember really the timing, but I suppose about a month after we got the Atari, he already had had completed Bruce Lee through the end.
Nice. So what did you do with that computer other than play Bruce Lee?
No, a lot of things. I also remember that one of the good things about the computers is you got a basic manual also. a manual of the language basic, and it told you how to program, some graphical programs even. So I remember with my old brother, typed in all the programs from the book and started writing new programs, and that's how I learned to program in BASIC first and other language later. About 2 years after we got the Atari 800 XL, we got as a gift also a disk drive, and the disk drive changed how you really could use the computer to program, because having a cassette player, a tape player, is really not very good to storing your programs. You lose your data sometimes because you overwrite where you shouldn't have written. So it's really difficult. But having the disk drive, it was very easy to write bigger programs and start learning. And that's how my passion with computers and programming developed until today.
Very nice. Tell me about the Atari environment in Chile. Were there other people using Ataris? Were they easy to find in stores? Were there magazines? Were there books?
At the start, when I got my Atari, as I said in Christmas '85, there was a few people with Ataris, but I think around the end of '86 through the start of the '90s, the Atari was very, very common in Chile. Almost all my friends that had a computer had an Atari. Most of them have Atari 800 XLs, but then the Atari 65 XE and the 120, 130 XE were more popular. But I think through the start of the '90s, it was the most common computer in Chile. There was even a magazine called Mundo Atari, Atari World, that was very common in Chile. I have a subscription, so I had all the magazines, and they basically reprinted articles, translated and reprinted articles from the USA magazines. So they sometimes have many games to type in, mostly translated from English. Some even didn't work because they mistranslated the program. So you have to type in and fix it until it worked. But it was a very good, I don't know if call it a scene, but there was a very big community of people that had Ataris, and you can, but mostly based on piracy, because we share the games with all the kids. You go with the tape to the school and copy the tape, so you can got the new game, etc.
Sure. Was there, so did you eventually move away from the Atari and then come back to it?
Yes, yes. I think in 1991, about 1991 or 1992, my father bought us a new computer, a PC clone, 26, and that's what for me the end of the day, because the PC was so much powerful, especially for programming. I learned to program in C. My father brought the Microsoft Quick C that also came with the book that talked to how to program in C. So this is a real language. I learned what a real computer language was, and I completely forgot about Atari for a long time. But in the university, we always have this kind of conversation with our friends. No, Atari is the best. I had a friend that that came from Europe. He said that the Commodore 64 was greater than the Atari. I didn't believe him. And I have another friend that had a Sinclair Spectrum, so he also thought that the Spectrum was the big computer. So we we thought about that, but it was all remembering, because all of us clearly went into PC and then PC gaming, and we we only have the fond memories of the old computer of our childhood. I think I came back to the Atari mostly because nostalgia about the year 200, 2005. I don't know, but I think about that time I started to care about the Atari again. In my family, I have my youngest brother is 10 years younger than me. He inherited my Atari when we got the PC because he was really small. So the big brothers have the PC and the, the small one had the Atari. And he also developed a really interest in the Atari. And when I went from the university, when I went to visit my parents in the home, my brother always showed me in the Atari what programs he made, etc. But so this keep the Atari alive in my family for a while.
Nice. Did you get the Atari back from your little brother eventually?
Yes, yes, eventually yes. When when my fathers moved from the old house to they now live in an apartment in Santiago. They had a big box with all my things, and the Atari was inside, so I got to keep the Atari, and I have it with me now.
Nice.
This also means that I could program in the Atari again, and uh, one of the things that happened to me when I got the Atari back was that I realized that the Atari was much slower and much difficult to program than I remember, because you have that idea in your mind that the games were so good that all the things you could do, and when you try modern programming techniques to the Atari and try to make a program in BASIC, you say, "Oh, this is really slow."
Yes.
Yeah.
On the Atari, did you always do BASIC, or did you try Action or assembly language?
I did assembly language at the end, and I also learned Forth. The FigFort, I have the disk, the floppy disk for FigFort, and I tried a few programs in Fort, but it was really not easy to program in those environments. So, but assembly, yes, I realized that assembly was the only way you could do things fast in the Atari. So I learned assembly at first by myself. I remember that I simply copied mnemonics or code from the magazines and tried to change the numbers to see what happened, and started to learn by iterating. I didn't have a book of assembly in that time, but from the magazines, then the advanced articles explained that you a lot of assembly programming, and uh, there's you learn by simply copying and doing examples, not by following a book.
Yes. All right. So you got your Atari back. You're back to the Atari, and you realized that BASIC was slower and not as good as you remembered. Um, so then what? Then what happened? Did you discover Turbo Basic XL at that point, or
No, I used Turbo Basic when I was a child. It was really the very. I remember I had a diskette with the Turbo Basic Excel, and it was always in the floppy drive. So you booted the Atari, and it loaded Turbo Basic, and basically almost all my programming on my was in Turbo Basic. But I think that after going to university, I studied engineering. So you learn a lot of things how to do programming in the really for real, and you learn a lot of techniques, and you learn how to do proper structured programming, and also how to develop using guidelines, using a lot of rules that make you you could write better programs and maintainable programs, etc. So I wanted to apply that to the Atari. And I think I always wanted to write a compiler. So that's why I started writing FastBasic, because I wanted to write a compiler, and doing one for the Atari was really great. It was fun.
So when did you start on FastBasic? I know you sort of released it in 2017, I believe. When did
Yeah,
it
yeah.
start?
I I did a few false starts first, not of FastBasic, but I tried to write a compiler for TurboBasic, for a TurboBasic derived language, and it didn't went anywhere. But I think that what prompted me to write FastBasic, what was in that time was not called FastBasic, but my FastBasic compiler, was the 10-liners of the time, the 10-liner competition, because I saw you could really write good little games in BASIC if you had a faster BASIC environment. Using the same abbreviations, the same tools of TurboBasic, but using a faster language, you will write very good games. So I started to write this compiler, and also I wanted it to run in the Atari. So I started experimenting, and from the first experimentation to the first release of FastBasic, it was, I don't know, 3-4 months, not more. So it was really fast, and it's because I think what I lacked before was the focus on what the product you want. And in FastBasic, I wanted to write, I need a simple compiler optimized for short games written in 10 lines. So this focus guided me to complete the project because I have real goals to meet.
Mm-hmm. To be able to make a 10-line basic game
Yes.
that was fast and fit.
Exactly.
I
And
I
mm,
I I have done the 10-line basic program contest a few times, only using Turbo Basic XL, and I used your TBXL parser thing to squish it down.
yeah.
That was very helpful. Much better than doing it by hand, which is
Mm-hmm.
how I did it the first time. Um, and it was great. It made a lot of fun. So you reverse engineered uh, Turbo Basic XL first,
Well,
correct?
but I did that when I was a child.
When you really?
Yes,
Wow.
yes. Because when I was learning to program in assembly, I really liked Turbo-based Excel. So I started disassembling it. And I have a few uh, a few pages of text. By hand I wrote all the code. So I started. I want to know how TurboBasic makes circles. So I started disassembling the program until I got to the point where the code that makes a circle works, and I disassembled it and I started understanding how it makes circles. And then to understand how TurboBasic draw a circle, you have to understand first how TurboBasic parses a number, because you need the number for the parameter of the circle. Then you start disassembling how the functions work. Then you start disassembling, and so I have, I don't know, about 40, 50 pages of handwritten assembly of all this disassembling of TurboBasic. So I already knew very well how TurboBasic worked. And so it was not that difficult to write the parser, because the parser is not based in how TurboBasic implements the commands or is implemented. It's based on, it is an independent parser that understands the same command and translate it to a shorter form.
Mhm. And all right, so it took you a couple months to get the first version going. It's written in what language is it written in?
In assembly.
In
In
assembly.
assembly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and then, all
But
right. So, first of all, I don't. Did it help you win the 10-line contest?
no, never. Because I lost interest in the games and because it was more interesting to write the compiler than the game.
Okay. But many people have won the 10-line contest because of FastBasic.
Yes, yes.
I've seen it. I've seen it mentioned that using FastBasic is just so above, so better than the other languages that it's almost cheating to use FastBasic because it's so good.
Yes, I agree because also uh, because for example I interacted a lot with Bitoko. Bitoko also is from Chile, so we talked a lot about the direction of where FastBasic was going. He asked me, for example, I want to go display list interrupts. I want to do display list interrupts. How we can implement that? We can implement that simple. Or he also said, I wrote this program, but it's too big. What if we add a new abbreviation so we can write this shorter? Okay, we can add a new abbreviation to the compiler to make the the text shorter.
A new
So
abbreviation to help make the programs even shorter. Nice.
exactly. So it feels like cheating, but Bitoko always uses the previous version of FastBasic because he wrote most of the games that Bitoko writes. He writes it almost a year in advance.
Most of the games
He,
he writes are what?
about a year in advance. He
Mm,
writes it
mm,
a year before presenting to the contest.
mm.
He makes many iterations of the games. So when he finally submits the program, he's using an old version of FastBasic.
I see. I see. That's how you get it done. See, I've always waited till the contest started to start my programs. That's how Fitoko
No,
wins.
no, no, no.
It's
Because
working.
I think he's always looking for things for new games or new ideas and say, this is a good idea for a 10-liner. I will write it down. And so he has a backlog of ideas for games.
Nice. Very nice. Um, so are you right now? I think we're at FastBasic 4.6, right? Um,
Uh, I think I have to do a new release. Hopefully, before New Year, I release the new version because I've been really occupied in other things, so I have left FastBasic a little on the side. But there are a few things that are already in the repository in GitHub that are not in any point released. So I need to make a new release soon.
okay. So are we talking
For the end of the
new features or bug fixes or what?
mostly new features, but the small features. I think the biggest feature is that the people behind the FujiNet added a few commands to talk to FujiNet, to talk to the end device that is the device that allows you to communicate with the network, and also added a CO command that allows you to write to this to CO. CO is the standard input output in Atari, so you can write to the disk drive or other without use directives. You can do low-level disk access without using assembly code. Above that, it's not very. I don't remember right now. I could see the the chain log, but there's not so many changes. I want to do big changes to FastBasic, but I always postpone that because to do big changes, you have to keep a lot of the small improvements aside for a while and uh, and rewrite a lot of the infrastructure. I don't want to do that yet, but I have a few things that I would like to do in the future, especially about adding a proper compiler to assembly. Because right now, FastBasic is always interpreted. It is compiled to a bytecode that is interpreted, but it's not that difficult to write FastBasic as a real compiler to 6502 code, but it will make it bigger. So one of the constraints that I have with FastBasic is I don't want it to be bigger than about 8 kilobytes. But you doing a native compiler, a compiler to 6502 assembly will make it bigger. So I don't say I probably will make a new compiler, an extra compiler that gives you the extra speed in addition to the actual IDE, because the IDE is what it is important to be small, because you need to have in the Atari memory the IDE, the compiler, and the program you are editing, and the compiled program. So you all of that should be small to fit in the limited memory of the computer.
Sure. Do you have any idea how many people use FastBasic? Is it dozens?
No,
Is it hundreds? Is it thousands?
I think it should be about between a dozen and 100. Less than 100, more than a dozen. I suppose. I don't know.
Sure. It's hard to tell. You put it out there and people use it or they don't.
Exactly. There is a few big users that interact with me, that send me comments, that find bugs, etc. But those are about 6, the big interacting users.
And I assume, I mean, you've GPL'd this. This is just a hobby. This is just for fun. You're doing it because
Exactly.
you're having fun.
Exactly.
Nice.
Yes, because the moment it it stopped being fun, I won't do it. I have a proper job for doing this other stuff, so I want to do these fun things in my spare time.
Sure. What is your proper job?
I work in a company that do technology for the mining industry, mainly. We do system with cameras and vision, artificial intelligence, that kind of thing. So I also do programming in my job. But I program in JavaScript and C++ and modern tools.
Online, you are DMSC. What does that stand for?
My name,
Your name.
Daniel Mauricio Serpell Carriquiri.
Ah, okay.
my foreign initial. We here in Chile, as most of the Spanish-speaking countries, we use two names and your father's surname and your mother's surname.
Very nice. So what's coming in your vision, the far future in FastBasic? What would you like to add? You said a real compiler. What else?
Yeah, I want to write a compiler. I also explored the idea of making a proper card-based system, because when you have a banking cartridge, you also can have a bigger program. So I also think that could be a new idea. But I don't think FastBasic needs many more things. What are the things that most people want, and I think I will implement in the future are ability to have local variables, because FastBasic, all the variables are global now, but having local variables is easier for you to reason and to have proper subroutines, but it's not very good for the Atari, because you have a small system with limited memory, as I said a few times already. So having global variables is better to actually better use your memory and better access to all the parameters and the function, etc. But having local variables is something that most people want. Also, the ability to include files, to do separate compilation of many files. This is something that will work for writing bigger programs. But I don't think many more is needed for parsed. I don't think adding too much features is counterproductive, because I I think that one of the great things about FastBasic it is simple, and I want to keep it simple.
Sure, that makes sense. Do you have other Atari projects other than FastBasic that I don't know about? Or does that take all of your Atari time?
No, no, sometimes I also write other little programs, but I think currently not many other projects. I I think I want to in the future finish a few games that I started writing when I was a child. I have the graphics, for example, for a little Robotech game that my brother draw a few of the graphics. It will be fun to actually make it a game and not to use that. Uh, I I don't know, because currently I have other projects that are not uh, Atari related. For example, I want to port FastBasic to other computers.
You want to do what?
I to port FastBasic to other computers.
Oh,
For
interesting.
example, I have a little 6502 base computer with FPGAs and modern graphics, etc. I want to port FastBasic to that. Or I I had a few old computers that I want to repair. I really enjoy doing also electronic work. I I had my soldering gun, and so I try to repair my old computers. I enjoy that. I enjoy doing things with microcontrollers and that kind of makers things that are popular now. Those I think use a fair amount of my time, but I don't think any other Atari project right now on the horizon. I don't know. Anything could be. And there's a lot of things I could do, but I don't know right now.
Yeah. All right.
There is another project. Yes, I remember. A few years ago I started the source code of BWDOS. Do you know BWDOS?
I've heard of it. I don't know much about BWDOS.
Yeah. It's a Sparta compatible DOS that is much smaller, uh, and the source code was released, and I was also shrinking it, fixing bugs, and so I had my own version of DWDOS that is smaller than the original. This is other project that sometimes I spend some of the time uh, to make a good small Sparta DOS compatible DOS.
I've been playing with FastBasic in the last couple of weeks. I finally got it working on my Mac. Um, I'm using Visual Studio Code to do the code, and
Yes,
then I just hit one button and it runs in the emulator, and I'm having so much fun with it, and it's so fast and I enjoy the language, and it makes sense and from a modern programming perspective. So thank you.
you're welcome. It's very great. So I have a new user.
Yes, yes, you do. And you're pretty active on the Atari Age forums.
Yeah, I try to read it. Sometimes it overwhelms me because you stop reading it for a month and come back and there are 1,000 posts.
Yes, yes, that's
So you say, wow,
I'm
what I
familiar.
missed.
Yeah, but
So
I
I try to
posted
read.
some. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I try to read the subforum of Atari programming. This is the forum that I read the most because it's very few posts in comparison with the main forum.
Right. Well, I happened to post something the other day about a Starfield, trying to get a
Yeah,
Starfield program working in FastBasic, and I didn't tag you or anything, but you showed up and you were there with the answer. It works great.
because you were in the programming subforum.
Oh, right,
That's what the key. So
right,
I read that part.
nice. All right, what haven't I asked you about Atari things that I should have?
I don't know. Uh, I don't know. Perhaps about the Atari scene in Chile. A few years ago, no, not few, about 10, 15 years ago, we did a meetup of retro computers with many people in the Atari scene in Chile,
Hmm.
and it was very fun. Hopefully, we will do something like that again. One of my friends, I have a few friends that are active in the Atari community, and so I think it would be great if in Chile we also do some meetups with the people, because when I see in Europe and USA the meetups of retro computer enthusiasts, it's really great. I see. Oh, I hope near here it will be something like that, so you could meet all the other people interested in that in this.
About a year ago, I interviewed Rodrigo Castro, who was one of the organizers of Atari Expo that happened in Santiago.
Mhm.
Um, so there is something
See, yes, yes,
that seems
yeah.
like
You also,
that was a fun time.
I think you also interviewed Bitoko once, no?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Maybe Randy did. Um, yeah. So yeah, we are trying to get some Chilean representation in the
Yeah.
podcast. Great. Um, all right, I think I'm about done. I'm going to ask a question that I always ask, even though you're on the forums. If you could send a message to the people who are still using their Ataris today, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
Ah, keep having fun. That's what I always say. Have fun, because for me this is the Atari world is remembering the old times and having that fun that came with your fond memories of your childhood. Is this time that you have all the time, the free time to simply play a game, or learn about computers or learn to program basic. It was fun time, so I remember that time fondly, and I like to have fun using my Atari.
Me too. Great.
Yeah.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute something, please consider supporting my Patreon at patreon.com/savitz. I've been publishing interviews like these since 2013 and would like to continue doing so for a long time, and your financial support will help. Thanks.